So now I'd also like to point out to the audience that we actually have representation here from all different aspects of organizations. So Ben is a local government official, AJ is a nonprofit executive, Stephanie is the CEO of a corporation, and Jacob works at a foundation. And so what I'd like to do is ask each of you, we're going to start by talking about the opportunities of emerging technology, and then we're going to talk about the barriers folks face when trying to adopt emerging technology. So I think, Ben, I'll start with you. How are local governments using new technologies to serve residents? And this is probably a great time for you to tell us about the new Berkeley rule.
Well, to tell you the truth, they're not really. There's a burgeoning movement to introduce new technologies, and it's frustrating because in my day life, I'm a frontier technology attorney, and my clients are like cloning people and making space energy and all kind of things, right? And then on my night job at City Council, where I avenge the people by night, they're using MDOS and those legacy systems, and manual check-ins for the workers, and it's really oppressive and Stalinistic. It feels like, and so the barriers are probably threefold. One, ignorance, and so not aware of the possibilities. Two, switching costs, and switching costs implicates let's call them stakeholders, right? We know what I'm talking about here. And so the switching costs are high. And then third, of course, is sort of lack of interest because there's been no consequence. But now I think cities are forced to adopt some changes because of the federal retrenchment of funding. So my city, like all cities now, are upside down financially out of nowhere. And so the needs are much greater. You have much more people without health care, homeless people. You have the severity of many conditions, right, for people. So you have to do more with less. And so now people are finally, as they lay people off, as they make systems work better, they're incorporating new systems. And so to meet that response, we created what we call the Berkeley Rule, which is a 10-principle framework for how cities should use AI. And it's less about the how, the nitty-gritty of the regulatory environment, but more the why. What are the principles? The AI should be used to stimulate wealth, to create well-being, to protect people, to turn the city into a platform of success instead of a punitive engagement partner. And so I'm very proud of it.
Excellent, excellent. AJ, what should nonprofit lawyers know about the ways that new technologies could assist in their work?
Yeah, so the other day, actually just down the street, I was at a conference here in DC, and the question was posed to a room about this size, but filled with nonprofit housing counselors who, if you don't know, their day-to-day is working with folks one-on-one to improve their credit scores and their savings so that they can make a jump in their financial future. But there was a brief AI demo where they were shown some capabilities of this technology. And then the room was polled and they asked, how many of you think that this could improve your daily workflow and help you serve more clients? And every hand in the room went up. And then they asked, okay, well, who is either already using it or plans to start using it very soon? And then every hand went down. And I'm in the back of the room, like, what's going on? And so they went around and asked people to share their experiences. And it turns out what's happening is folks can see plain as day that like all of the stuff that is sort of non-human, the paper pushing, the logistics, the government reporting that slows down their workflow is a perfect candidate for AI to augment their role as financial coaches. But they are also extremely nervous about the privacy implications, about whether this is safe and effective and whether the AI is going to hallucinate and give them bad financial advice, right? Very real concerns. But the thing that I noticed as more people started to talk was all of these concerns were abstract. They were sort of loosely formulated fears, maybe from reading the headlines and watching the news or TikTok or however people get their information. And I, in my position as the leader of a small nonprofit that's hoping to use AI for this very purpose, am lucky because my director of operations has a law degree and understands exactly what's happening in the terms of service with our contract with Claude or Gemini or all of these things. And so we can take these abstract fears and risks and make them concrete and make a reasonable business decision about the best way to protect our company, but more importantly, our constituents. And so I think acting as risk translators is a tremendous role for lawyers to play in the coming days.
That's great. That's great to hear. We should have known about that conference. We'll invite them next time. Stephanie, you're using emerging tech for social good in a corporation through the corporate forum. What should corporate actors know about the use of blockchain and AI?
Thank you. So when I first started Alokia, we had this very simple proposition, and it was, what if waste isn't waste until we waste it? What if it's actually inventory of value and it can be traded like a financial asset across one system of record? Keep it out of landfill and help everybody have economic and environmental wins. And to me, that seems so obvious. Like, this just makes business sense. Why are we losing now $2.2 trillion a year with all this excess? And so back then I'd go around New York, and we're fortunate we have a lot of big companies there, and I'd knock on doors and I'd talk to them about this idea we had. And, they'd kind of scratch their heads and say, yeah, maybe there's something there. We'd go talk to the sustainability department. They're like, yeah, go talk to them, see if you want to work on some, little project. And I think there was a lot of my distrust or confusion around what we were doing and how we could do this at scale. And so fortunately, over this time, a lot of those no's and doors that were closed became yes. And a lot of it is due to the benefits that blockchain and AI afford. We use this technology in order to help these companies find what they have in excess and take action on it. And you can do it in a way that is private, secure, controlled, and automated. And so now we're bringing this back to companies and telling them how we're using AI in order to help them, move these resources better. And we're using blockchain so they can trust the information about these products that are being sold in the digital space, and that, we want to work with them. And I think a lot of them still in the beginning get the idea wrong, and they think, AI, let's build some agents and do some pilot projects, or, blockchain, let's pilot a little blockchain solution in crypto. And they didn't really understand how this applies to supply chain. And what we ended up doing was building a system now that became so autonomous and so quick and so easy, they don't have to do anything. They don't have to understand AI. They don't have to understand blockchain. They don't even have to know that we're using it. At the end of the day, they can participate in our solution and get economic and environmental wins. And that's all they need to know. And so, the reason I mention this is when you're working with big corporations, we work with companies from Nike to Anheuser-Busch. A lot of times, yes, we know the devil's in the details and how the technology works, but they don't need to know. They just need to know that there's a result that they can trust with data they can stand behind, and feel confident speaking about the economic, environmental, and social wins that come out of these kinds of solutions. So, that's how we've been able to navigate, especially with the big corporations.
That's great. That's great. Okay, so Jacob, you were changing gears a little bit to talk about governments. You work with governments in the US and in the EU, and are you seeing government agencies using blockchain and AI?
Kind of. I think I can't speak as much about AI, but definitely with blockchain, I think there's a lot of interest in government in finding out more about it. Historically, I think a lot of the attention, especially here in the United States, has been on the more financial applications of blockchain technology. That's building trading infrastructure for the next generation of securities markets, or the work that the CFTC has done on commodities markets. The area that I work in mostly at the Filecoin Foundation is mostly on data and data storage. And so I think a lot of the work that a lot of government agencies have done have been more on the sort of tokenized finances kind of in trading apparatus at this point in time. But even still, a lot of because the government has restrictions, especially financial regulators, about like what sort of technologies they're allowed to use. We're still very early stage in their ability to really play with these new technologies and find out where they can be useful. Because it's they have a responsibility to keep everything safe. And so that is beginning to change. It's beginning to be more trials within governments. Different governments overseas I think, are further along than the U.S. federal government in this respect. But I think it's going to be more of a kind of slow and deliberate kind of trial and error process.